The following programming is sponsored by Marc J. Bernstein. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or Beasley Media Group. Entrepreneur, founder, author, and financial advisor Marc Bernstein helps high-performing business owners turn their visions into reality. Through his innovative work and the Forward Focus forums, Marc connects entrepreneurs to resources that fuel their success. Founders Forum is a radio show and podcast where entrepreneurs share their journeys, revealing the lessons they've learned and the stories behind their success. Join Marc and his guests for a mix of inspiration, valuable insights, and a little fun. Now, let's dive in.
Good morning, America. How are you? Good morning. I'm just checking our mic levels because I can barely hear myself in the microphone for some reason. So, we're on the radio. So I just have to tell you, I just came back from Florida. We were doing shows down there. We had a whole different way of doing shows, and we are changed our studio around, all kinds of things. So apologize for that little blip there. Anyway, it's not a beautiful day in Philadelphia today. It's a little gray. I came back from this blue sky weather, and we've had beautiful weather here, but today it's a little bit gray in Philadelphia. But it's bright in the studio because I've got a great guest with me today, someone who's been on the show before, Ryan Sullivan, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a second. But for our thought for the day, which we always do, I've been thinking about a book that I'm reading, and it's by a guy named David Brooks. And David is he's a commentator on TV, on news, things like that, kind of a thought leader in a lot of different areas. And he writes books on different subjects, interesting subjects. And he wrote one recently that's on the bestseller list called How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. And it's a very interesting book. I kind of think I got it in the first 10 pages, but I'm reading just because he tells a lot of stories and a lot of parables that kind of illustrate his points. But Ryan, I know you're a deep thinker, and when I tell you more about Ryan, it's very interesting because he's a young guy with an old soul. But what does that mean to you when I talk to you about how to know a person, the art of seeing others deeply and being deeply seen? Yes. How does that resonate with you?
Sure. So I think there's, what comes to mind when I think about this is small talk, right? And kind of that transition where you're like, I got to come up with, we'll talk about the weather, or we'll talk about the sports team. So I can try to get to this person into a real conversation, right?
Right.
So I have like small talk, and then there's big talk. For me, I don't mind small talk, but I really want to get to that big talk, or whatever you might want to call it, the opposite of small talk. Let's talk about something deeper. It doesn't matter to me what it is, but that's something I really resonate with this because I love getting a little bit deeper and learning more about somebody and who they are, not just, what they do.
So actually the piece I read last night talked about, you meet someone new, and I've made this mistake younger in my life when I'm working on my personal growth and things. Particularly when I was dating, I would meet women and I'd want to get deep right away. Well, that could scare people off.
Sure.
It can intimidate them, right? So, and not just I've done it in business situations, and I've learned that lesson over the years. And I'm not a big small talker. I don't really love small talk, but you have to because you have to find some commonality and you have to build the basis for a relationship before you start getting into those things. And that's a lesson I've learned over time, which is kind of interesting. So it's how you use the small talk and the big
it doesn't always work. Yeah.
I know. I understand. So let me tell you about Ryan Sullivan. He's been here before. Ryan makes music and podcasts. So we have that in common. I make music and podcasts and money, as does he, but I literally make money. And we're actually going to talk about that a little today. He's the founder of Podcast Principles, a boutique content strategy and production company for B2B businesses. After his own podcast and music career took off in 2019, he helped other creators and business owners do the same. Since then, he's helped hundreds of founders, entrepreneurs, multi-platinum artists, and creators around the world launch and grow their shows. His mission, to help thousands of business owners expand their reach and revenue through the power of creative podcasting and media. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Mark, for having me, and thank you for doing this, something a little bit untraditional for us.
This is going to be a little untraditional. So when Ryan was last here, I was very impressed with him. Are you 26 yet?
26.
26. Okay, so he was 25 when he was here, and we connected we connected. I mean, we had a lot in common, and we connected, and we stayed in touch. And what he's doing now is different. What you're doing now is different than what you were doing a year and a half ago. So why don't you talk about that for a minute, and then we're going to flip the script here.
Sure. So, and I won't get right into that. I'll talk about what we're doing for a second to add the context. But what we do now is we had a company that helped business owners launch podcasts, right? Now it could be podcasts, or it could be video, or it could be radio, or it could be just shooting content and recording these business owners just talking, right? So now we have a lot more ways to do it. And we've now adapted a little bit more to the comfortability of the person on the other side of the mic.
So full transparency, Ryan's here partly because we've decided to work together. He's working with me on my podcast, on this podcast where we're going video. We haven't done video before, so today's show is the first video show, and we're going to be doing that in the future. And also he's working with me on, we have, so I'll just say this, I never really talk about my business on the show. I'm a financial planner. I've mentioned it. I have a company. I have partners in a company called March. We're sometimes called March Forward, sometimes March Advisors, depending on the context. And that's what we do. And we work primarily, I work almost exclusively with entrepreneurs. As a company, we do a few other things, but primarily we work with entrepreneurs. And I don't talk about this, but I developed this as a way to kind of take off on what I do every day, which is talk to entrepreneurs about their stories. I really enjoy it. And I really started this out of love and just to have something to post on social media without really knowing what I was doing. So I've never really posted directly about content, about the business and what we do and what's different about us. And there are a lot of things. And Ryan, the old soul that he is, has convinced me I should be doing that. So we're going to be talking, we're not changing the content of the show, but today we're flipping the script and he's going to interview me. And this is going to begin some of our video and audio content that we're going to be putting out there. So this is different for me, and it's odd for me to be here and be the interviewee, but I'm ready.
All right, perfect. Well, let's get into it. I will keep this show somewhat predictable in terms of how you run it. I'm not going to be the interviewer that Marc Bernstein is. It's not what I'm trying to do. But we will get into your story, Marc. And
you
that's
are
the goal.
Anyway. You just do it in your way.
I appreciate it. So why don't we open it up with the beginning, right? How did this start? You can go any angle or direction you want to go with the start. But let's talk about it. How did this start for you, whether that's the financial side or even how you got started in your career?
Okay, so let's go back to high school. In high school, I was always a good student, got good grades, but never really interested in a traditional career. I was going to be a rock and roll star. That was what I was going to do. I would daydream in classes, and I would write songs and create, and I had a songwriting partner, and I had a band, and that's what I was going to do. But I also knew that in my family, I'd be the first one going to 4-year college, and I knew it would be a letdown to my family, but also to myself to not have that opportunity, because college, those were the days when college was a great thing. It still is, but the dynamics of that have changed a little bit. But I tried to figure out what I was going to do. So I became a music major with the idea that I was going to study music, and I didn't know what I was going to do after that. And then everyone always told me you should be a lawyer. And because I argued pretty well. So they thought, that might be a good career for you. And it was always kind of in the back of my mind, but not something that really appealed to me all that much. Until, I can't explain it, but I had an English professor named Dr. Charlie Robinson, and it was a romantic literature course. And I was very interested in that. College was the first time I got really interested in subjects other than rock and roll, and I saw usefulness in a lot of the things I was learning. And something about it sparked me about the Romantic authors and also the Romantic period in music, because I was also studying music history, that really appealed to me. And somehow, I don't remember the connection, but somehow it occurred to me, hey, there must be lawyers that are in the music business that represent musicians. Of course, that's called an entertainment lawyer, but I didn't even know that existed at the time. So I started doing some research, and I found this book called This Business of Music, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to be in the business. I'll be able to promote my own music. I'll be there. So we'll see how that all plays out. So that's the path I took. So I went to law school with the idea that I would be an entertainment attorney.
So, wow. Okay. So there's multiple directions we could go with that, but we'll keep moving forward in time.
Yep.
Did you end up pursuing, what was your opinion of being an attorney once you got further into that? And then I assume somehow there was the finance was somewhere in that journey along the line, maybe, somewhere in there.
Well, first of all, I chose the Ohio State University as a place to go to law school because it would be the most affordable to me. As a music major, I didn't think I'd get into a lot of law schools, but I ended up getting into many, surprisingly, because I think they were looking for diversity, and the fact that I was a music major might have actually helped me. So I went there with the idea that I would, number one, my undergraduate fraternity helped. I was able to live in the house. I took a resident counselor position, and I got a scholarship, and I could become an Ohio State resident after a year. So it became very affordable. And when I went, it was the only school that required an interview. When I went out there, I got a big welcome wagon from my fraternity, and they brought all the co-eds. And I was like, oh, this could be fun. It doesn't have to be drudgery to go to law school. So anyway, that was my methodology for choosing a law school.
Did you end up becoming a lawyer?
I did. I am. I'm still a lawyer.
Wow. Okay.
You may not know that.
Yeah. Well, do you? Interesting. Okay. So why don't I zoom in on one thing here?
Yeah.
Is there an overlap between law and finance that you found, maybe for you or just maybe in general?
Music, law, and finance.
Sure.
I'll finish. I'll try to finish quickly the story, and then I'll tell you. We have a break coming up, so maybe we can finish the story before the break.
Sure.
And go from there. But I quickly determined I hated law school. I mean, it's not designed to be a pleasurable experience, but I pretty quickly realized I probably wasn't going to spend the rest of my career practicing law. And in fact, I was with a friend, a fraternity brother, walking to the bursar's office to check out after the first quarter. I was resigning from law school. And somewhere along the line, I realized, I was at a time, I was the last year of the draft in the Vietnam War. And, if they hadn't ended the war, I could have been called up. And that was a war nobody at that point wanted to go to. But I did have this little inkling of, I would love to go to boot camp, but not necessarily have to serve in a war, And to me, I realized that law school was my mental boot camp and that I had to see this through. So I went from living in the fraternity house and the parties going on and trying to struggle with my studies, and I was near the bottom of my class. I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it right. So I started living in the library most of the time instead, and I turned that around. I finished the next 2 quarters, and I turned it around. I still thought I'm probably not going to practice law for the rest of my life, but I got to see this through.
Wow.
So I did, and I think it was a great education, and I'm really glad I did it. And I got out of law school, and I, just make a long story short, I spent a few years pursuing the entertainment field. I worked for a one-person lawyer in Philadelphia. I made contacts, a lot of contacts in New York, because I finished law school at NYU in order to pursue the entertainment business. I spent some time on the West Coast, spent some time in England, and I spent a few years trying to really put that all together, and I gave myself 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, I saw the underbelly of the business. There was a big recession at the time, and I saw firings, and I saw a lot of people I didn't respect in the business, for lack of a way of putting it. And I also was representing artists who, were needy in many cases, and I just felt like, I don't know that I can see, this is going to take a long time to be successful, and I thought I could be, but I felt like I need more immediate gratification, and I wasn't feeling fulfilled doing this. So that became my search for what I was going to do next. And with that, I think that's a really good place for us to take a real quick break.
Let's do it.
What's holding you back from your next big move? At Workshop Strategy, we're more than just advisors. We're partners in your success. We don't just hand you a plan and walk away. We roll up our sleeves and work alongside you to build a strategy that drives growth, strengthens leadership, and makes operations more efficient. If you run a medical practice, pharmacy, healthcare organization, or any healthcare business, we create solutions tailored to your needs and goals. We're here to help you take your business to the next level. Let's lead with innovation. Let's set bold goals, and let's achieve them together. Visit workshopstrategy.com to get started.
I guess I should say it. We're back on Founders Forum, but I'll hand the microphone back to Ryan.
Sure. So we're here with Marc Bernstein's story, condensed life story. I have so many questions about the music industry, about music law, so many things that maybe we'll do on a further episode or they can get into on a podcast where you're the guest. But today we're focusing on your journey. You left off at, hey, maybe this music law or entertainment law thing may not be my career.
So I got back from a trip to England and I was encouraged, but the artist I was working with was discouraged about our progress. And I'd put what I felt was my heart and soul into it for the last couple of years. And I said, you know what? I don't know if this is going to work for me. So I actually took a few months off, probably the only time I've taken a real sabbatical in my life, and to really figure out what I wanted to do. And I was looking at a lot of different things, different areas of the law, but I really, what I call the straight practice law that wasn't the music business, didn't appeal to me too much. In hindsight, there are a lot of things in the law I could have done, but I got attracted to this new, I have a brother that was in the insurance industry, and he said, hey, there's these companies advertising for lawyers to be financial planners. So I went to one of these interviews. They would not hire me because they did a marketing test, and it was really about who I knew more than, how good I was. And they wanted me now at my age with all my connections, not me at 29 years old, without all those connections. So, but I loved what they presented, and I said, this is what I want to do. And I figured it out because I love the gratification of helping people with their futures, their financial futures. I had some sales experience. I had background in sales. It just seemed like it fit me really well. So that began my journey to figure out how I wanted to do this. And I'll just say that the journey started with a company that, wanted me. They had just acquired, it was an insurance company that acquired a brokerage company, and they wanted me to work on both sides of the house, but they basically hired me to sell life insurance. Nothing wrong with that. And I've spent a lot of time in that end of the business, but it wasn't my picture of what I wanted to do. And the other side it was kind of a scam. It never really materialized. So then I went on, I started another company with a partner and started doing financial planning, but we didn't have a really good model for it. And then I joined a regional firm where I helped create the financial planning value proposition. This is probably going back 20 to 25 years ago. And I felt like this is really closer to what I want to get to do, where we do, we really go in without an agenda and do financial planning. We charge a fee, and then we help implement the plan for clients. And I started out in my law practice, besides musicians, I had small business owners as my clients. That was sort of my natural market. And I also had lawyers because that was a natural market because a lot of my friends were lawyers, and some doctors. So I've always basically been in the entrepreneurial marketplace. The doctors and lawyers were primarily the entrepreneurial lawyers and doctors that had their own practices and businesses aside from what they did, aside from their professions. So that's what I gravitated towards, and that's what I've been building for the last 40 years, I dare to say right now.
So we could go right into, okay, what are the challenges, that you face with this business? If you don't mind, I'd love to talk about what were some of the challenges that you saw people facing where you were about to design this financial planning value proposition. Like, what problems were you solving?
Well, yeah. that's a great question. I wasn't expecting that one. But number one, intelligent people, lawyers, doctors, doesn't mean really they know anything about finance or, so I did a lot of educating early on, still do, about, it started out about products. And that's one of my challenges because it was all product driven for many, many years. And I didn't want it to be product driven. I wanted it to be planning and process driven. So what I realized is that even people that thought they had a lot of things done, when we would have deeper conversations and talk about things like their legacy or talk about the future of their businesses or talk about some of the issues they're having in their businesses that they maybe don't think about on a different every day, but when you get deep, they say, you know what, I've got to worry about, like, if I want to succeed this business, I have to make sure some of these employees retain them. And we're having some issues, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Things like that would pop up. And I got to really like it to the point where I've written a book, and the book is called The Fiscal Therapy Solution because I felt like that's what I do. And I really thrive on that. And it didn't hurt that my wife was a family therapist. Yeah. And I feel like I grew up in my marriage in therapy, and I became kind of a money therapist to a certain extent.
Does it seem like, is it always that financial challenges, so to say? Are they always, do you find that that starting with the person, right, and their actual challenges will help fix the financial challenges? Is that where you start? You start with the person, and kind of back to the theme of almost the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, I'd say that varies. Sometimes if you fix the financial challenge, it helps fix the person.
Interesting.
But sometimes the other way around. And I'm not there. I'm not really a therapist. I'm not really there to solve all their, inner demons and all that kind of thing. But I have a lot of satisfaction from having helped people find a lot of peace.
Yeah.
Just through the talking process.
Yep.
That's why I call it a form of therapy. It's a form of unlicensed therapy. I have many licenses, but not as a therapist.
I love it, and I'm just really glad that you explained that because I find that that's one of your differentiators. So before we get into where this company's going, talk about, some of those actual challenges that you faced over the years, and then we're going to get to the vision as well and what you guys actually do on a day-to-day.
Look, in most of the industry, there's a pressure to sell products, and I felt that at all levels, all the time. And, and I was okay with it to a certain extent because it's a great way to learn and it's a great way to help people. A lot of the products really help solve problems. But the journey was to switch it around, and today what we do, and, still our value proposition is still evolving, but my ultimate dream is to have a company that does financial planning the right way. And what I mean by that is total blank slate planning. We have no agenda in mind of anything to sell. Another thing that we do today is that most money managers, and there's a famous one, I won't mention the name, that's always talking about, we're fiduciaries. We sit on your side of the table. We do better if you do better. Well, that's true of anybody that charges a fee to manage money. However, their goal is to look at your portfolio and tell you what's wrong with it, and then they manage the money. Well, then it's the fox watching the hen house. Who's watching them? They're never going to tell you, hey, we screwed up, like you should move your money somewhere else. So what we do is we hire independent managers that we've vetted and that we use a regular basis and that we have relationships with. And we can intervene when need be between the client and kind of mediate between the client and the money manager and do a lot of the hand-holding with the clients, et cetera. But then, replace the manager if it's not working for the client because their objectives changed or the manager's style changed or whatever it is. And those managers understand that that's what we do and their clients understand what we do. So therefore, we're not us watching us. We're there to really look after the client's interest and truly sit on the same side of the table. So there's other aspects to it, but those are two of the big points that make us different and that also I'm looking to perfect. And I'm, driving my partners crazy because,
Yeah.
These are things that I've dreamt about since I started this business, and we're very close. We're on the edge of being there, and we're continuing to work on it.
I think we have time for this. You spoke about doctors, lawyers, people like that when you were building, different other, financial businesses, right? Who do you work with now?
Primarily entrepreneurs of all kinds. Still a few of the doctors and lawyers and things like that. We have, as an example, a lot of oral surgeons, and we've been getting referred to some new ones. But these are entrepreneurial people. But all kinds of, manufacturers, technology companies, real estate developers, you name it. But what they all have in common is that they're entrepreneurial.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why that's not the same as a financial plan for, a standard 9-to-5 job, for example.
Right. So another thing that I'm starting to talk about a lot is that what is the keystone asset for an entrepreneur? Almost always it's the business or it's the assets if they're, it's the real estate, if they're real estate developers. So most people will look at, whatever liquid money they have and say, oh, you should be in a 60-40 portfolio or whatever it is. And we look at it and say, we're building a plan around what their key assets already are. And, which is another big differentiator. We start with the business and look outward instead of just building it as a separate thing, which I see so much is happening out there.
What do you have to do in this next 3 to 5 years to make your vision a reality?
Well, we have a plan. We're working with some outside consultants, and the plan is to improve our client processes such that we're really delivering as close to perfection as we can get and delivering on our full value proposition. So we're starting with that, and then we're rethinking about how to brand it and market it, which is part of why you're here.
Absolutely, and or hopefully your success is a result of us working together too. And I just want to say thank you for doing this, and thank you for doing this untraditional interview, allowing me to take the reins, Mark. I really appreciate it and loved hearing your story here.
We have about a minute left, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh,
only because, and then maybe we'll respond. I'll answer the same question. What's your favorite music, since you're a music guy?
Wow, it's so hard for me. It's so hard to pick. I will say my favorite band. It's called Sublime. It's a mix of punk, rock, and ska. I have a Sublime tattoo on my shoulder, so that's my favorite band, favorite genre. I don't think I have one.
Great band, great band. I mean, I love them. I was just listening to them. There's they have a big song, the big hit that I was thinking.
Probably Santeria or What I Got or
What I Got.
Yep.
Yeah, What I Got. So mine is, and this is our generational difference, the Beatles. They everything I did and all the music I listened to came from that. So I've talked about that before. So enough of that. And that's about it for us today on Founders Forum. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to my story today. And Ryan, thanks for being a great interviewer and a great guest. And we'll continue.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.